this video is for your Unit 8 project, which is a self-portrait. There's lots of different ways to go about making a self-portrait, but we're going to focus on a couple of ways. But here's some examples on the board of just a few different types of self-portraits. So a self-portrait is a portrait that you, of course, make of yourself, and you put yourself into, you put your own touch and your own style into your self-portrait to make it unique to yourself. So for this project, we're going to focus on a couple of different methods because I want you to be able to do a basic portrait and know the proportions, where your features go, and to give you a little bit of guidance in that area. So there's two ways to go about it. I'm going to go over with you step by step today, and you can use this video to pause and move through each one step by step along with your materials and your instructions. The first choice will be just drawing, just freehand drawing using proportions like you see on the left hand side. And then the other choice is drawing using a grid. And this is a really fun choice as well. So whichever one you decide to choose, you will come out with a really nice portrait. So the first one is freehand drawing with proportions. So you have this little sheet here as a worksheet in your instructions if you'll click on that link. So you can print that out if you'd like to. So as you draw your face, you'll follow kind of this step by step, and laying out the guidelines is what helps you line up your features in a proportional way. Okay, oops, there we go. So the online project it's really nice. It's like a Renaissance style project, and you would set it up kind of like the Renaissance painting. So you could do like your whole upper torso, kind of like the Virgin of the Rocks, or you can just do your shoulders up, okay, or you can zoom in. I just don't recommend just doing your neck and not your shoulders because it just looks like your head is floating in space. Okay, and here we go. So composition, thinking about Renaissance composition, like the Mona Lisa here, you have atmospheric perspective in the background. That's where it's like a landscape, and it gets kind of blurry in the background because it's far away. It starts to get more blurry, and in the Renaissance styles, it was more kind of blue and hazy. So that's a nice background to pick if you do a freehand drawing. Any sort of natural setting that kind of gets hazy in the background. And you can put in there anything that you'd like in your background. Another style would be one-point perspective. That's often used in Renaissance that we've seen. So you can try that if you would rather, whichever you prefer. And then this is a drawing, but you can have your choice of mediums for this one. I'd like you to really get into it and enjoy it. So some suggestions are you could paint if you enjoy painting using acrylic, watercolor, or oil. And we're going to, of course, draw it first. So kind of take a look at this example, and then you can choose if you want to go for the painting. You can use colored pencil or just regular black and white. You'll be doing a lot of shading and adding values, so even just using pencil, it's going to be much more than just a sketch. If you have pastels or charcoals and would like to try that, that's fine. Or you could do a mixed media portrait, even like some of the ones that you saw on the main page. You can also use kind of a combination of pencil and paint, or colored pencil and acrylics, or however you want to work that. So for this project, we're not doing the computer generated ones because I really want my main objective for you is to freehand draw or to draw with a grid your face. So if you do it with a computer, it's not going to be the same experience as having done that by hand. Okay, so these steps are actually in your online lesson for this one. So lightly sketch a triangle on the paper. And then sketch a rough outline of your head and torso inside the triangle to create a pyramid configuration. Do not include details such as facial features yet. So just get the main setup, the main outline and pyramid configuration. Looking at a mirror as you work, refine the shape of your head and torso. So you want to actually look at yourself and what your unique shape is. Then add facial features. So that's a lot of steps right there. We're going to break it down a little bit more, okay? So refer back to your facial features as you go. And the first thing we'll do is draw the eye. And you notice that it's on the middle line that goes horizontal across the middle of your head. Okay, so that line that's in the middle, it looks kind of weird to have your eyes right on that line, but that is actually where your eyes fall. So if you look in the mirror and disregard your hair, just kind of slick your hair down and look at the distance between your chin and your eyes, and then your eyes and the top of your head, you'll notice that they're in the middle. Okay, and then another guideline is that the size of your eyes are usually set up proportionate to the size of your head, in that there's like the size of your eyes is between your eyes, like in the little picture, and then also on either side. So keep that in mind as you're lightly sketching, and you can even lightly sketch that little eye shape in the middle if it helps you space your eyes out more correctly. Okay, and we've done a lot of eye drawing in here. You did a great job on your anime eye. This one's more realistic, and even on your sketchbook guidelines, there's 3 different realistic eyes that you can go by. But I don't want you to just copy the step by step, but kind of use it as a guide to look in the mirror and notice your own features as you go as to what yours actually looks like. And then another thing you can do, I love this eye because it shows like a landscape in it. This is actually a pencil drawing. Can you believe that? So another thing you could do to kind of jazz up your picture is to draw a hyper realistic eye. And this guy, he is 19 years old, so not much older than you, and he draws hyper realistic eyes. I put his link at the end, um, and I'll point it out to you when we get there. But rather than just drawing the colors, as you see, he added in like some kind of fantasy-like details or a landscape in there, something that's reflecting in the eye. So these are pretty detailed, especially the skin. And that's just for you advanced people that want to kind of give it, you know, kick it up a notch and try something a little harder. You could take a look at these to try one for yourself. Okay, but that's not required. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. I challenge you to try it though. Okay, and the next part you'll draw is the nose. And again, um, you're not meant to be drawing this fast. You can pause it and just take this video as a step by step. But look in the mirror at your nose and notice that there's not like a harsh outline anywhere on your nose really. It's more just it's showing 3-dimensionally because of the highlights and shadows that are making up the shape of your nose. So this little drawing tutorial thing here, it kind of helps you just with the shape so you can see where to put the shading. So the only lines that you really see are kind of down in the nostril region. and you'll want to use the edge of your pencil to do the shading. One more thing about the nose, looking at your little guideline up here, notice how it kind of sits, the line between your eyes and your chin shows where kind of the bottom of the nose comes to. And I would say even just maybe a little bit more into the nostrils. So take a look at how yours is shaped again. It depends on the person as to how that part of your nose lines up with the line. All right, and then the mouth, I think, is the easiest part. The middle of your mouth generally sits on that next line down, which is halfway between your nose line and your chin line. And you start with the middle. We'll have one more slide on the mouth. But if you will draw your mouth closed, it will be the easiest, I think. But you can try drawing your teeth if you'd like. It just adds more detail and things, however you would like to do that. But here's a few realistic mouths. And here is a step-by-step mouth drawing. Start with the center line, and then go with the top lip, and pay close attention to how your lip is shaped looking in the mirror, okay? You don't want to just copy this one because yours might not look like this. But as far as the part of the lip, go in this order. Top of the lip, bottom of the lip, and then start adding in some shading as you go down. Okay, ears and hair. You'll find a lot of ear drawings on the internet, but a lot of them are facing your ear, like facing the side of your head. And since you're kind of doing a straight-on portrait, and depending on your hair, you may or may not even see your ears, or you might just see a little bit of your ear sticking out of your hair. So the figure at the bottom right, that's a pretty good representation of when you're looking straight on how much of your ears that you actually see. But if you need to look up a little bit more about it, depending on your position, please feel free to do that. And you notice that the ears kind of go from the top of your eye to the bottom of your nose. And that seems like a long way, but actually your ear is kind of stretched long for the most part. And you'll see, no matter the size of your proportions, that is generally true of all ears. And then the hair, just the special consideration to take with your hair is that it does not go on the top of your head. Okay, so you see the hairline in this little picture, and it kind of comes down your forehead between your eyes and the top of your head. And then, rather than drawing just little strands of hair, try to see it more in chunks. It always helps me to kind of squint my eyes and look at just the darks and the lights first, and then add the middle tones after that. Okay, so once you sketch your features, like you see here, use the Renaissance technique of either atmospheric perspective or one-point perspective to add the background scenery and to give the composition a sense of depth. This artist is using atmospheric perspective. When the painting is finished, the background objects will be less detailed, paler, and bluer than the foreground object. Okay, and that'll really make your figure pop forward as well. Using a medium to large brush, establish the form of the figure by painting a thin wash of color, loosely building the shadowed areas and leaving the paper unpainted where the highlighted areas will be, such as folds of clothing and cheeks. Okay, so you're kind of blocking in the color here. Leave your highlighted areas. Once you've established the outlines of the basic forms in the painting, begin adding colors to the different parts, starting with the darker colors. Layer one color on top of the other. Loosely paint the background areas as you go to make sure the background works well with the portrait. Okay, so you're using some of the same colors to paint the background. It's okay to use some of the same colors in the background and the figure to unify the painting. Here the artist is using some of the browns and blues of the background as highlights in the hair. When you're about 85% finished with the portrait, begin adding the lighter colors such as highlights on clothing and skin. Use a small paintbrush for details such as eyes and hair texture. For extremely fine details such as eyelashes, use colored pencils for a fine tip marker. Sometimes you can't even see those little details very much. Finish by painting the remaining details of the background. Sign and date your portrait. And if the date will not fit down there, like I think it would be sloppy if she tried to paint the date. So just do like she did and put a little piece of paper next to it and show it. Okay, now you could look at those in your online lesson as well. We've done a lot of painting in here, so I think that is as good of explanation as any in terms of the steps of the painting. Now you can choose to paint it less realistically, but I think getting the proportions correct and trying to make it look as much like you as you can is important, no matter what style that you use, okay? Here is the finished painting. So you see that it's a torso, and they went with Renaissance techniques of atmospheric perspective and strong highlights and shadows and yeah, things like that. Looks very nice. Okay, now here is the second technique. And if you're a little bit intimidated by drawing freehand, you could try this technique. So there's pluses and minuses to both in terms of difficulty, okay? But once you get the grid set, this one is probably a lot easier to do. All right, so drawing using a grid. This is a very popular way artists draw, actually, or paint. Grid drawing makes it easy, in a way. Drawing using a grid can lessen your chance of mistakes and break down your drawing into simpler parts. Grid drawing is for beginners and advanced artists. Okay, so you might be saying, what? So first of all, you want to start with a good portrait photo of yourself. Okay, this is of course not a student, but a member of One Direction, of who I do not know the name. But it's a good portrait because there's background showing, but yet it's close up enough of him where you could see the features really well. So I think it's a nice composition, and so something like that of yourself would be great. His mouth is closed, so that makes an easier mouth to draw, but you can do yours however you'd like. If you want to have a dramatic expression or something like that, that's fine. Okay, so my suggestion is to enlarge it to 8 by 10. You don't have to, but I think it's easier for it to be on paper, and then it's easier to measure where your marks are going to be if your picture is a little bit larger. If you're going off of a small photograph, it's just harder to get it precise. I would cut it 8 by 10. If your paper is 8 by 10 and a half, I would still cut it down to 8 by 10. Okay. So once you pick a photograph that you want to draw of yourself, you're going to draw a grid, okay? So I like to start in the middle and work my way out, but I just lay the ruler down and make a mark Now you can make marks every half inch or every inch. So think about the size of your drawing and how detailed it is. So the more detailed it is, the more squares that you want. Okay? So that's important. And then also making all of your lines perpendicular so that you have perfect squares. That's very, very important. So take your time and get this part really well done on there. So then you're going to make the exact same grid on the surface that you're going to draw or paint. Okay, your squares can be bigger so that they're proportionate if you want to enlarge it. But as long as they're in proportion and they're all square, then you're good. So let's start at the top. Now grid your paper or canvas with the same number of squares. It's important to draw very lightly because you will not want to see your grid through your paint or your drawing necessarily. Okay, so keep that thought in the back of your mind. Okay, if you want to draw a realistic drawing, you'll definitely want to draw very lightly. You can enlarge your photo by increasing the size of your squares. So say, for example, in your photo, they're a half inch because your photo is kind of small. You can make your enlargement 1 or 2 inches. So each square could be 2 inches big, and it will make a very large version of your picture. Okay, so that's the trickiest part of grid drawing, is preparing your surface. Drawing the lines very straight and perpendicular, and then matching the form on your space. Okay, once you have done that, there's 2 ways to go about drawing your picture. One is an outline drawing. Okay, it's got, you're drawing the outline of the figure first. And the little marks that you see on here are kind of little guidelines that you can make for yourself as to where in the square they're touching, or how big that part is within each square. So you're using the squares as a guideline to draw what's within each square. So you can either start with the outlines of your drawing, or you can draw one grid at a time, like as if they're each a little mini piece of art. And you can shade it as you go, or like in the first version, you can draw it all out and then go back and shade it. Okay, so notice on the second one, the original photograph is pretty small. It looks like they used maybe half-inch squares, and then they probably used 1-inch squares for their drawing. So it got bigger because each square is doubled in size. So breaking down each square, it's really fun. I think you're really going to enjoy this because it's like a whole bunch of just simpler drawings. When you're working on one individual grid, it helps to look at where the main lines intersect and where the details go. So I kind of eyeball this rather than making marks, but like looking at where the mouth is, it's about even with 2/3 of the way up the square and about halfway across the square. So you can kind of think of it that way when you're measuring it out. And you can fix it little by little as you go if you erase it or if you make mistakes. Once you get to the shading, and we've talked about this a lot before and in our sketchbook guidelines, but you can use any technique to shade. It's really up to you as the artist. But to get a nice realistic three-dimensional appearance, you want your shading to fade from dark to light. The more blended it is, the more realistic it looks. But you may or may not want it to look realistic. So these are 4 main ways that you can add your shading. And you can also just simply blend. Okay, so this is the exciting part for me. I hope for you too. So the last option for you to do is a portrait in the style of Chuck Close. Now, you may have heard of Chuck Close before or not. He's a very famous artist that kind of originated his own style of doing these giant portraits, and he's done lots of self-portraits too. But he uses the grid method, as you see, and within each little grid, rather than making it always realistic, he does different techniques, different little paintings, like they're all each a little individual painting. And he first started using a grid to draw realistic portraits. Uh-oh, I went forward too soon. And he started that way. His first portrait was him as a young man, and it was 9 feet tall. And it was a realistic portrait that he used the grid method on, and you couldn't see the grid. It just looked like a big realistic drawing. But he has a very interesting story, which I will not tell you right now, but there's some videos about it I want you to watch. And so here is a way for you to get some extra credit in art class. If you will do your project as a grid, and then when you add your detail or your shading or your colors, if you will use a different technique than just simply blending, but something along the lines of the idea of Chuck Close portraits. The one in the middle is directly like his style, but you could use doodles, designs, colors, black and white, little pictures, a combination of all of that stuff. If you try to make yours like that and succeed, then you will have a possible of 35 points out of 25 points. So you'll get 10 extra credit points on top of your project grade for doing that. Okay? So I know I rushed through the Chuck Close slide, but there are some very good videos on Chuck Close that are very short, easy to watch, and it gives you a good sense of Chuck Close as an artist, and then how you could maybe transform yours into your own style, but inspired by Chuck Close, not just copying him or anything like that. Okay, so here's another example. If you're going to do the Chuck Close style, you're going to want to do the outline method. Okay, so start with the major outlines of your picture. And you can even outline them with a pencil on your photograph if you don't mind your photograph getting messed up with lines and everything. And then you can actually see the main lines a little bit better, like this person. Okay, and then rather than shading in each piece, you can add paint or different doodles or different designs, and it can become anything that you want. So here's some examples of high school students that did this method. And I've done this with my in-person classes before, and it was really fun. It took us a while to do it, but the results were really, really nice. And it's not that hard to do once you take it step by step. It's a very fun project to do. Okay, so that's the project. Here's all the links that I used. I don't want to take credit for any of the things that I used that were done by other people, so I credited them at the end. Um, so let's see here. The one that is AshleySpencer.com. There's a really good article there about Chuck Close, as you see in the title there, and a really good little videos which I am linking in your instructions that I'd like you to watch about Chuck Close before you do the project. Even if you're doing a different style than the Chuck Close version, that's fine. And you can do any style. They're they're all worth the same amount of points, except the Chuck Close style is worth 10 extra points because I just think it'll take a little extra time. So, and also it shows that you tried to kind of take it to the next level. So, all right, have fun with it, you guys. I can't wait to see what you come up with, and we'll talk to you later. Thank you. Bye bye.